afternoon. I'm Jeremy Smith. Here, I'm a sales development representative here at EventBank. We're happy to have you here with us today as we present navigating the new normal of the event industry. So the event industry has taken a serious beating from the COVID-19 pandemic. The world's concept of gathering has changed. Though the crisis has been challenging, the experience has also provided unique opportunities and avenues for the event industry. Today, we will hear from industry experts that will share and educate on how the event industry can navigate forward and become a global force once again under our new normal. To kick off today's event, let's welcome Nick Dugdale-Moore, the regional manager in Europe of UFI, the Global Association for the Exhibition Industry. Welcome, Nick.
Just take myself off mute. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. We were just chatting before. Greetings from London, where it's almost as hot as Arizona. It's approaching 100 degrees here, and we're not used to that. So thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm just going to share my screen. I've got a small presentation to share with you, and I'll just dive straight in. So hopefully you can see that, and I'll try and make it full screen. There we go. So UFI is the Global Association of the Exhibition Industry. We have just under 800 members in 87 countries, and we directly represent 50,000 exhibition industry employees globally. We also have 56 national and regional association members. So, for example, IAEE and CISO in the States, the AEO here in the UK. So when I talk today, I mean, our members are B2B trade exhibition organizers, B2B organizers. Some of them obviously organize conferences and other types of live events, you know, business events, but this is what fundamentally I'm talking about. So you can see there that 70% of them are exhibition organizers, because obviously some of the organizers, some of the venues organize as well. Between them, there's 90% of our members have either organizers or venues. Beyond that, we have some partners of the industry, like the major service providers, so Freeman, GES, or the logistics company, Schenker, etc. But principally, our members are the organizers and venues. So where are they based? We now our fastest growing part of the world is Asia. We have over 100 members in mainland China, just under 40% in Europe, and 11% in the Americas. So we're headquartered in Paris. I'm here in London. We have an office in Asia and Hong Kong, in Dubai, and in Bogota. So what do? We do, as the industry body, we do a lot of lobbying, we do a lot of research, we do educational programs, etc. And we also run our own events. So here you can see the events that were, well, supposed to take place this year. We run perhaps 6 to 8 major events around the world every year. And like everybody else, I mean, our last event was in Rome in February. And then since then, like all of you, you know, all events have been stopped. But again, you know, like many of you, we've kind of pivoted to virtual, as it were. Very similar to today's format, we've been running a series of webinars, UFI Connects, we call them, which are 1-hour Zoom meetings, so very similar to this format. You can find all of them, the recordings online at ufi.org/UFI Connects on a variety of topics. You know, the one you can see here is on reopening of exhibitions. So when I talk about the exhibition industry, you know, what does that look like? One of the pieces of research that we did is to kind of get a handle on what that is, because our industry is very badly misunderstood. You know, when you talk to people about, you know, exhibitions, in the eyes of government, big business, we're classified as integrated media, so similar as WPP or these, you know, advertising giants, which we clearly are not. So we calculate there are 4.5 million companies that exhibit every year, representing with 303 million visitors. And just the important figure on the right-hand side, what that the total economic impact of our industry is approximately 167 billion euros, or about $198 billion annually. So what we've been doing, I just want to now dive, hopefully this will work, dive out of this onto our website. So to show you, you're now looking at our website, what we've been doing. So the first thing, you know, the first major show in the West, if you like, to close Mobile World Congress, all of this shut down for the first time. People refuse to come home and kind of think, what was this stuff again? People studies coming out from different so policymakers.
Hey,
So
Nick,
yes,
sorry, your audio is breaking up.
my audio is breaking up.
Now it's very clear.
Okay.
Let's try it again.
Okay, so the first part of this is that exhibitions are very important. You know, if you want to rebuild the economy post-COVID, the fastest track not only is the economy or that location, but obviously the underlying impact of the industries we serve. So what's the fastest way to get the machine tool industry, the leather industry, whatever it may be, very important. Concert or whatever. Yeah.
Sorry, we're breaking up. Let's see what we can. Let's do this. Maybe Anne. We can get Anne to start, and let's figure out if we can solve the audio issue on your end.
Okay.
All right, well, good morning. It's morning in Arizona. Good afternoon, wherever you all are. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I'm Anne Gill, President and CEO of the Tempe Chamber of Commerce out here in sunny, hot Tempe, Arizona. So I'm pleased to be with you to kind of share a little bit about our journey and our ability to successfully monetize our signature events. The Tempe Chamber has been around since 1908. We're a small staff of 6 doing amazing things, and really proud to share our journey and hopefully give you all a little tidbit to take home to your organization and help you as you go through this new world of virtual events. So I am going to, let's see, share my screen here really quick. Awesome. So as I mentioned, we've been working diligently and just kind of wanted to share a little background about our recent journey to kind of give you a context of where we were coming from. March 13th, we were excited to move into a new office space, and that was Friday the 13th. And sorry for this slideshow, seems to be moving without my doing it. March 15th was Arizona stay-at-home order. And of course, by that time, at the end of that week, March 20th, we were hosting our first, sorry you guys, this wasn't happening earlier. Our first COVID-19 webinar by March 20th. Oops. Danica, did you take over my screen?
Yes, I did.
Okay. If we could go back. All right, then. So just a little bit about that, working with the SBA to host that first webinar. We moved all of our board meetings, committee meetings, network event meetings into a virtual space. And of course, our staff immediately, working remotely and from home. So we did what we had to do to get connected virtually, got a VPN in place, putting all this together while we were implementing the technology that we needed to work to make sure that our members had the information they need to navigate this pandemic. So Danica, if you could move to the next slide, please. So during this time, we have 4 signature events that take place during the month of March and June. We have our State of the District, which was originally scheduled for March 20th. So we'd already had sponsors lined up, tickets sold, because it was literally that next week. Of course, we had to postpone that, and we eventually rescheduled that for May 22nd. And we'll hear a little bit more about how that worked in a minute. Our Sustainability Summit originally was scheduled for April 3rd. So of course, we had to postpone that, and we did eventually reschedule that for August 6th, as well as our Leadership Conference and Expo. Originally was scheduled for May 22nd. We had approximately 30 days to make a decision because this is a large event, working with the hotel and the ballroom and the requirements that we had as far as our contract. And then we also had our annual luncheon, which was scheduled for June 26th and one of our largest signature events. And again, had a certain amount of days to decide what to do in order to make sure we didn't incur a lot of costs regarding our contracts. And as you can see, these 4 events, just in these few months, were 30% of my entire program and event budget. So for our fiscal year, fiscal responsibility, it was really important that we work together to try to make these events take place in some form or fashion. So during this time, we were calling all of our members to try to get them the help that they needed, but we really needed to take a look at how we could still be sustainable and continue these events. So if we could move to the next program, or next slide. So we had to reimagine what we were doing, and we made the tough decision, by mid-April, that all events would be virtual through the end of 2020, just because of what we were seeing in Arizona and the fact that we as an organization had to plan. We made that decision so that we were setting things up on our end. And we reviewed every one of our event budgets, looking at the sponsorships that we'd already received, the tickets that we'd already sold, and really how can we reimagine our event in the virtual space. So looking first, at sponsor benefits, the content that we were going to provide was still the same type of content. It just didn't include breakfast or the chamber chicken lunch, if you will, for those programs. So we felt it was critical to maintain those investment levels and to provide more exposure for our sponsors and branding. So we were able to provide commercials depending on their investment. We had on-screen branding opportunities, and we looked at how we could reach more of their employees, more of their vendors, make them a shining example to their organization. So instead of a table of 10, maybe they would get 20 attendee links. So if they were a vendor or a presenting sponsor, maybe they would get 50 attendee links. So we were able to increase the attendance with obviously no impact because we didn't have to provide breakfast or lunch for all of those individuals. And then we looked at our single ticket pricing, knowing that, again, that they weren't going to have that meal. We did adjust those down a little bit lower. Those who had already registered for some of our events, we reached out to everyone individually to let them know, this is where we were at. We're going to be going into a virtual space. If you wanted to get the credit for the difference in price, we're happy to do that. And happy to say that not one person did that. So we were able to maintain the single ticket prices that we'd already sold. And then we really needed to figure out, okay, if we're going to do these signature events that are usually in a large ballroom with hundreds of people, how can we make this a little bit different than a typical Zoom meeting? And so thanks to the relationship that my Vice President of Programs and Marketing has with a vendor here in Arizona, we were able to identify a production partner in Video West. And they literally had just finished producing the American Dental Association's annual conference with 3,000 attendees, 11 breakout sessions in a virtual way. And so I figured if they can do that, they can easily handle, our smaller signature event that we had to do to help maintain, our budget so we could continue to serve our members. So if we could move to the next slide, Danica, thank you. So again, thinking about all of our events. So the first thing was, how do we follow all current health and CDC guidelines? So Video West has a clean stage in studio, and you can kind of see a picture of that there on the screen. And so we were able to provide social distancing. Masks were required if you weren't on stage, no more than 10 people in the studio, and their entire team was in a completely different room. So we were able to keep safety at the top of mind and make sure that we were keeping our members and community safe. The other thing is, how do you engage your attendees in a visual way? So we looked at different ways for engagement throughout some of our signature events. So whether that was polls to engage them, or a progressive trivia contest, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, because it was incredibly successful. And then some of our events, like our leadership conference and expo, our sustainability summit, an expo was part of that production. So we were able to create a virtual expo opportunity thanks to the technology that we have with EventBank, so that we can connect those vendors to the attendees even before and after the event was over. And then our leadership conference that we have also included a silent auction in the past. So we were able to find an affordable auction platform for us to use this year. And the great thing is, it actually gives our donors more exposure, because that auction will be open 2 weeks prior to the event, and hopefully we'll be able to raise a little bit more money to support our Women in Business Council's programming. So if we could move to the next. This is a question that I've heard from a lot of people, and this is a little snapshot of our sponsorships at a glance. And the whole snapshot, or the whole sponsorship grid, is on our website, so it's available for anybody to take a look at. But you can see that some of our signature events, what the investment is, what the sponsors would receive. But then you can see we also have, at the top, whether they would have a virtual or on-site expo, if they would get table or virtual tickets. And the reason we did this, because we wanted to keep what might happen down the road from a hybrid opportunity when we're able to perhaps do some of our events again in person. So this just kind of gives you an idea of some of the benefits that we worked with our sponsors. And so then we called every single one of our sponsors who had already invested in these events, told them what our plans were, what we were doing, gave them an opportunity if they wanted to reallocate their fund to something else. And I'm proud to say 100% we're on board, and actually we were able to raise more money. So I think that talking to your sponsors is so important. And to give you an idea of some of that success, go ahead, Danica, you're reading my mind. So our state of the district, and this is with our Congressman, Greg Stanton, and every year he gives a live address, and part of that is a Q&A with the audience. So again, this was originally scheduled for March 20th. We were able to do a live interactive broadcast on May 22nd. The great thing is our presenting sponsor was Fox Corporation. So they were also able to help provide some engaging videos and promotions. So working with Video West, we were able to bring Fox Corporation representative in from New York, as well as Congressman Stanton from his office. And then you can see that I was live there in studio. So in order to accommodate some of the Q&A, we asked our attendees in advance to submit their questions, and we're actually able to pre-record some of those questions on video and share those with the congressman during the broadcast live. So as you can see at the bottom, our revenue was a huge increase from the previous year. So we had an 85% increase in our net revenue from the year prior for this event. And as well as more attendees than we were able to have in the past. So State of the Chamber, this was our annual luncheon. So since we were not going to be serving any chamber chicken, we changed the name. We were able to keep the date of June 26th, because this is our annual awards event. Thank you to our board of directors. Again, it was a live interactive broadcast. Southwest Airlines was our presenting sponsor. And so typically in the past, we've had $40, $100 gift cards to give away, and maybe we would hide something under a cup in the ballroom or some ways for people to see if they won those gift cards. So how are we going to do that virtually? So we came up with a progressive trivia contest, and the first 40 people who answered all the questions correctly during that broadcast and submitted them to us, they were able to get a gift card, and we were able to send it through the mail. So really working with Southwest Airlines and our presenting sponsors to identify ways to help bring value to the programs, but also to them because they're so vital to what we do. And I can tell you that some of our attendees, especially on the corporate side, they were able to engage so many people to be part of the broadcast and see their business receive an award because of this contest, because everyone, business people, we're all competitive. So everybody wanted to receive that gift card. So the great thing is we were able to produce probably 16 different videos as part of the production of this programming. So, and as you can see, it was also a large increase in revenue and attendees from the year prior. Danica, we can go ahead and go forward. And just to give you an idea, it's kind of scary. You never know what's going to happen. How are people going to respond? This is some of the feedback that we received from our sponsors, from attendees, and I don't think after any of our in-person events that I've ever received so many emails of thank you and congratulations to the team for an outstanding program as when we did these virtually. And I kind of like the one where I enjoyed it as much as the live event and actually even more, because now some of those people that were at the back of the ballroom, they have a front row seat. So I think it's really important to think about what your sponsors, what your attendees are looking for, and make that step and be bold. So next slide. So kind of just some tips, from our experience to share with you. And the first one is really determine your destiny. If you haven't decided if you are going to be virtual, in person, I think that is what helped us to plan for the rest of our entire year. Is we decided that we were going to be in the virtual space so that we could plan accordingly. And it just makes it easier for your sponsors to understand, for that communication to take place. And be creative and be bold. We've been able to do so many different things visually that we couldn't do before, and really focus on the production details. That attention to detail is critical. So the way that we were able to make sure that when those of us who were in studio were safe and distanced is if there were two people on a stage during a video or a commercial, we were able to clean the microphones, clean the podium, whatever needed to be done where the viewers couldn't see that. And so that timing is really critical. And also if it's an hour that you're scheduling, keep it to an hour. So, make sure you're going to go through all your videos, your script, be respectful of the time for the folks. And then communications with your sponsor, critical. We couldn't do this without their support, finding out what their needs are, how we could adjust our benefits to make sure that we're meeting their branding needs, and their support was really critical. That one-on-one conversation needs to be had. So these are just some of the tips, and I'm always happy to answer any questions. Suki Jenke, my VP of Marketing Programs, is amazing. We couldn't do these programs without her, so we're always happy to help our friends out there to see if there's anything we can do to help you. So I think with that, Danica, I'm happy to share my contact information and then turn it over to the next speaker.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ann. Here we go. All right, so next we have the fireside chat with Sue Sung.
Actually, Jeremy.
Yep.
Sorry, we're gonna go back to Nick. We tried a few things, and we're gonna see if we can get his audio working, and we'll let him finish his presentation first here.
Awesome, sounds good.
Thank
over
you.
to you.
Thank you. Is that okay? Is that working, everybody?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Fingers crossed. If somebody could enable me to share my screen, because I rejoined, so I'm not a host. There That would be great. Okay, so apologies everyone, that was, I'm not sure what happened, but I'm just going to dive in from here. So what I was talking about was, look, obviously this is an unprecedented situation from March, no events globally. The first show that opened up was a bridal show in China, and all eyes were on that in May. Since then, there have been more events that have taken place across China and across Asia, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Thailand. There have been events happening in Europe as well. There has been one trade show in Germany, several in Poland, and most of Europe now have go dates, start dates from either currently or from September or October. But getting the green light and the go date is only one part of the battle, it's the first hurdle. What we found is that the confidence that was needed from our visitors and exhibitors isn't there. So here in Germany, for example, Germany does understand as a country the value of trade shows and exhibitions. Their federal government in May separated trade shows and exhibitions from other types of mass gatherings. Can I just check that everyone can hear me okay?
Yep, you're doing good. We can hear you clearly.
So they recognized the value, separated, made a separate distinction, enabled the states to proceed. And so the states did, and they started planning their major shows in the fall. However, this was from a couple of weeks ago, Cologne Messe actually found that their visitors and exhibitors did not have the confidence, weren't coming back, and so they postponed or canceled most of the remaining shows in this year. So we're planning to hold our global congress in November. We're planning a decentralized congress with 3 or more events around the world. And this is what we'll be talking about, which is preparing your bosses and investors for reduced profit margins. This is some research we published last week. We first published it in March and we updated it again last week, which shows that globally, the exhibition business, our members, their business will be contract by 60% this year in relation to 2019. What that means is $188 billion of total economic output will not be generated directly from the exhibition industry, but more importantly, almost $300 billion of contracts will not be signed as a result of companies not being able to meet on the trade show floor. So we publish every 6 months. We started it in 2008 after the crisis. Ironically, this is our Jubilee 25th edition in this crisis. And there's answers from about 500 companies around the world. Now, globally, again, this shows that if you look at operating profits, it's pretty dire. You know, the gray showing no activity through April, May, June and July. And on the right-hand side, if you look at when do you believe that exhibitions will open again, into next year, depending on a local exhibition, i.e. if your visitors and exhibitors are from your city or your state or your region, it's much easier than a Mobile World Congress or a World Travel Market or one of these large marquee events where a large percentage of the visitors and exhibitors are coming internationally. So looking at revenue, that slide shows that globally, 39% of revenue will be achieved versus 2019, and operating profits on the right-hand side, almost 40% will operate at a loss, and a reduction in the profits of about another third. So it's really pretty grim, and I'm sure I don't need to paint that picture for you. We have a lot of data broken down from the States. It's a slightly better picture. So the revenue compared to last year is 44%. And also, if you look at the operating profits, is also marginally better performing than the rest of the world. So, you know, I guess we talk about virtual or hybrid events, you know, and congratulations to those that have managed to navigate this successfully. I mean, V-commerce, which is live interactive streaming as a sale tool, is already big business in China and in the B2C world. So on the left-hand side, you can see this is the Canton Fair, the China Import and Export Fair, which is the largest trade show in the world, which went fully digital this year with Tencent, which basically enabled, you know, if you can imagine QVC mixed with Zoom. So it enabled, there was real-time streaming of hundreds of exhibitors with real-time feeds that you could go in and interact with. And hot on the heels, Alibaba soon published their own rival platform. But, this again is more data coming from our barometer. Will live events be replaced by virtual? Now, ultimately, most of the data points towards that hybrid events are what we're moving towards, because of course, hybrid events give you the possibility to open up your audience to a much wider scope. It gives you what we've been talking about for years, which is the kind of 365 days of our community, because a trade show, the actual basic value proposition and the business model of trade shows has not changed in hundreds of years. Ultimately, you get the buyers and sellers of a certain market in the room for 2 or 3 days, and that's where the magic happens. It's very hard for organizers to monetize the rest of the year. Even the best companies, they only manage to get about 10% of their profits from digital. But certainly what we're looking at now, we were forced to look at our value proposition, to look at our business model, and everybody has gone virtual. However, the data also shows that, and we're about to publish a new report in a few weeks, that 90%, and we surveyed 10,000 visitors and exhibitors from around the world in, I think, 130 countries, and 90% said that their businesses had been negatively or strongly negatively impacted by the lack of live and face-to-face events. So the hybrid way is the way forward. What that looks like, if you organize a virtual exhibition and digital booths, how can you charge for that? Again, this is anecdotal data from about 500 people during an online event. There seems to be consensus of around 25% of a physical booth. In terms of digitization, which has been a buzzword in our industry for the last 10 years or more, this is data from the States. What extent has COVID impacted your company's activities in digitization? Well, 40% say strong or significant. So that's almost 85% of both. And in terms of, how has it affected the level of investment in your company? Most companies obviously are investing in virtual platforms. So it's a great opportunity for our industry moving forward in terms of being able to access new audiences, of being able to work better throughout the year. It can certainly open up more revenue streams, but ultimately we believe in the power of the face-to-face. It cannot be replicated. To me, if you look at kind of Major League Baseball, or football, when it was televised, does that mean that people do not want to go to games? No, quite the opposite. I believe that the more virtual and digital the world becomes, the higher the premium will be on live events. So we're in for a tough time, certainly. Most analysts believe that it'll take 2 to 3 years for us to get back to the numbers and the revenue certainly of last year, which was a record year. And we've got a lot of hurdles to get there, but there's great opportunities. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm happy to kind of, answer any questions, and perhaps, if we have time for a discussion at the end, and I can see what's been going on in the chat. But there we go, and apologies once again for the problems with the sound earlier.
Hey, Nick, one of the questions that someone has here is, are they able to get a copy of the report that you mentioned once it's...
Yeah, absolutely. I'll type in a couple of links into the chat. Everything, all of our stuff is on our website. You can find, we'll send the presentation, but I'll put some links directly to the reports.
That's great. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And with that, we will continue on our presentation here today. So next we will have the fireside chat with Sue Sung of Go Live Together. Sue Sung is the SVP corporate strategy for Freeman. Sue leads Go Live Together, an industry coalition of 2,700 members across the business events ecosystem, to draft unifying legislative position points for the business events industry. Welcome, Sue.
Great, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks, Sue, and thanks everybody again for joining. Sorry about the audio challenges. Certainly, as we all know, these things happen in virtual events. We're 6 months into this, but yet, one thing we don't control is the internet. So, what we're going to do. So, Sue, is amongst other people, obviously leading an industry coalition, and obviously doing some great things to hopefully get the message out and do some advocacy. So, we invited Sue to talk a little bit about what they're doing, and certainly about the organization. And so we'd love to learn a little bit. Sue, tell us a little bit about Go Live, how it all got started, and what the purpose of the organization is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So Go Live got started in late April, when this pandemic first struck the US in earnest and shut down our industry. Freeman, by virtue of its position in the marketplace, had a lot of relationships across the ecosystem. So venues, CVBs, other suppliers, globally, the associations, the for-profit show organizers, the corporate event organizers. And so, we really started this as a means to be able to amplify what we knew was already going on, and to be able to project that out to the rest of the industry. And really, since then, and really focused on US legislation, not because we don't believe in the power of this industry being global, especially when you think about all the impact of international visitors on the success of shows around the world. But our industry is relatively new to sustained advocacy efforts. We have a lot of folks within our industry that have done some great work on their own. Also, the whole business events industry in the US does not have the legacy that it has, that Nick has referred to, in Europe, in terms of there's a fair bit of educating that needed to happen with legislators, especially in the early days, where business events were being lumped in with other mass gatherings like weddings and concerts, that didn't acknowledge the value for transacting commerce and the importance of business events for businesses, especially small businesses, to sustain their own livelihood, right? So it's a totally different dynamic than some of those other mass gatherings. So there's a lot of work that we as an industry needed to do there. So honestly, when we started this and when Bob first approached me, we thought, we'd have a few dozen people and, we'd really just kind of amplify what was already going on. It's since ballooned. We have close to 3,000 individual members. We have probably over 1,300 logos on the website. We probably have over 1,400 organizations. Among those organizations, we have all the major industry associations as members. So, the reach is huge. So it's been a tremendous show of support by the industry and clearly a need domestically.
That's great. So can you just outline some of the sort of guiding principles and advocacy that you guys are, trying to get the message out about?
Yeah. So really two-pronged. First, to a lot of what Nick and Ann spoke to already. One is getting folks to feel safe about returning to live events as soon as it was safe to reopen. Within the industry, so on the GoLiveTogether.com website, you'll see we started to publish guidelines as people, venues and hotels and show organizers and corporations were listing out their health and safety protocols that they were adopting. So we really wanted to get legislators to understand the extent to which we as an industry were prepared to safely reopen, and and really rallying around some consistent standards. So, many of you might have heard of GBAC or the GBAC Star Certification Program. American Airlines has signed on to it. Hyatt Hotels has signed on to it. Over 36 venues, I believe, so far have signed on to it, as well as individual entities, as diverse as the Miami Dolphins, right? And why that's important is because, that's going to give participants comfort that when we say we are safe, that we are all following the same standards of safety, and those are consistent with WHO guidance, with CDC guidance, to help get them over that, that their reticence about returning. So, that's not really legislation per se, but I think it was important for us to amplify and communicate to legislators just the extent to which we as an industry were prepared to reopen safely. On the legislative side, we've been really focused on recovery efforts. So really incentives to jumpstart the industry when it is safe to reopen and get those attendees and exhibitors back. And it's not that, the relief measures aren't important. We know we're an industry that's hurting. 99% of our businesses are small businesses. They're heavily reliant, or we're heavily reliant on PPP from CARES Act. Many are on unemployment. All of that is really important. But, understanding what was already out there, we saw a real need and an opportunity for Go Live to make a difference and really focus on the recovery. Because when you think about an exhibitor, for example, the average cost of an exhibition participation can run in the tens of thousands of dollars. 80% of the exhibitors are small businesses. We know they're going to be in a cash strap situation, and we know if they're not given an additional boost to help them re-engage in this vital commerce channel, that's going to have a ripple effect on economic growth for years to come, because those small businesses aren't going to be able to make those connections with customers to become medium-sized businesses, and then eventually large businesses, and the jobs creation that come along with it. So that's really been the focus of our advocacy efforts.
And so far, what's been the reaction from the legislators and folks that you've been communicating with?
Very good. So I'm new to advocacy. My background is not in it at all. So, I may be a little bit rose-colored glasses with this, but we've had probably close to 24 conversations with folks on both sides of the House, both sides of Congress. We've gotten really good reception. I think people truly, understand we're real, we are an industry, but we are an industry that serves as a channel to support small businesses across every sector of the US GDP. So, helping our industry is helping healthcare, is helping manufacturing, is helping retail, is helping accommodations, is helping travel, is helping services, is helping government, is helping education. I mean, the list goes on. And so, and again, not only in our industry directly, but also the businesses that exhibit at our industries, we really exist as a channel that is most vital to small businesses. I mean, obviously, it's important for all businesses in terms of making those kinds of connections with customers and suppliers, learn innovation. For a lot of the medical associations, it is where innovation happens. It is where they can, collaborate with their colleagues from around the world in solving vital problems for society and humanity. And so that message has really resonated with legislators, and combined with the work of UFI and other organizations, and IEE and Exhibitions Day, we're really able to gain momentum quickly.
Great. And if there's one thing you want to sort of communicate to some of the folks who are on this call today, what would you like to communicate with them about getting involved, or trying to help, or even trying to make sure that they talk to their legislators?
Yeah, I would say the first thing to do is just, if you haven't already, go to the golive.together.com website and click join us. That is the easiest way to ensure that we can activate you. We have been very strategic in terms of our activations. we know there's been a lot of desire to do a lot. Everyone is, you know, we are in dire straits, and the news unfortunately hasn't been great. But you know, we've been trying to make sure that we're focusing and channeling all of that energy. So, for example, we launched a grassroots campaign last week when it was clear that there were a couple of legislators who were willing to champion us, right? And so we really wanted to target the effort there, as opposed to kind of a blanket coverage of the Hill, if you will. So we do want you to activate. We do want you to talk to your legislators. And you know, we do have messaging and assets for you, but the best way for you to be able to do that to effect is just to make us aware that you exist by signing on, so that we can, you know, send out the all calls. Sometimes it's been around data, impact data. You know, we need them to understand what, you know, what if they don't pass the next round of PPP, or if they don't extend unemployment benefits, what does that mean to our businesses? So it isn't just we're looking for stories right now. So it isn't just about reaching out to legislators, but it's really, you know, we need the human side of our industry, which is going to be critical for legislators to really, you know, hear and understand the pain that we're going through.
Absolutely. And, you know, actually, the last question I'll give to you. But for anybody on the call, if you do have questions, we do have questions for, you know, for everybody. We have some time. So just use a Q&A chat at the bottom, and we'll pile up some questions for Sue, Nick, and as well as Ann. But the last question for you, Sue, is, you know, going through this, obviously you said you didn't have an advocacy background before. What's been the most interesting thing for you over this period of time and this new experience?
The first one is easy. It's just the amount of support globally in this industry. It's a very special industry that we work in. You know, I didn't grow up in the events industry either, and just everyone to a T, what can I do to help? That's probably the number one thing anyone has said, and that has been tremendous. We certainly could not have gotten to where we've gotten in such a short amount of time. I mean, we've been at this for 4 months without that kind of support behind us and without those kinds of relationships. So I would say bar none. It's just, that's what we're hoping to capture. That's what I personally am trying to capture and share with legislators, because that is rare. It does not exist in other industries.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have time for everybody. And I'm going to give you the first question here. I know I saw it's somewhere in the chat early on. But as you know, you guys have now, or I don't know, month 2 of really figuring out this monetization component of your events. How are you going to, you know, even modify that even further as you look to the future, as you know, we get back to being and having in-person events? How will you guys think about doing events, you know, in person versus virtually?
Well, I just think we're going to listen to what our members want and what our community wants. I know part of those in-person events, the ability to build relationships with people, especially, you know, state of the city, you have all of the leaders in one ballroom. But I think we want to look at ways that we can make those connections in a virtual space in order to, you know, really continue to provide the value that folks are looking for. And I think, you know, we have things that are changing all the time too. For those of you who follow college football, Pac-12, the season's been postponed, and we always produce the annual kickoff luncheon. So we were literally getting ready to open registration for that virtual event. And so now we have to kind of rethink that, and what is that going to look like, and how do we recapture some of that programming. But you know, something that we're looking at for our leadership conference is kind of new is, you know, having a sponsor that will sponsor some of our speakers. So we're really able to bring in international speakers, national speakers who before on a local level, we didn't have access to. So I think looking at broadening beyond just our community, we've been able to have people attend from all over the country for our events. So it's really looking at it as a different way, instead of being hyper local, looking at how we can provide the value in a larger space.
That's great. Nick, obviously, as you mentioned, some events are already starting to happen around Europe. As you look at those, what can we learn here in the U.S.? Is there anything that, is already taking place in Europe that, can be transferable and can be run successfully?
Yes, I mean, as I mentioned, as I was mentioning when my audio was bad, so, a lot of the guidelines that have been put in place are, very similar around the world, and we've tried to bring that together. So it's social distancing, it's access control, it's hygiene factors, it's intense cleaning. Ultimately, we're the face-to-face industry. We have to put the safety of people first, and we can't stress that enough. And we always have, and our industry has suffered terrible catastrophes in the past, from earthquakes to this, to that, and the other. We faced it all as an event. So it's not a question of, we're trying to kind of put dollars before lives. Safety always comes first, but we strongly believe that these aren't, as Sue mentioned, it's very different to have 50,000 people in an arena for a 2-hour pop concert than it is over 3 days for a business event. We're confident that we can control every part of the visitor's journey, from registration to encourage them to print their badges at home, to arriving on site, every part of the journey. We already have the contactless badges. We already have the heat, tracking software. So we can really manage this very well. So we published a framework. On the back of that, we partnered with ICA and AIPC, which is a venue association, to produce a good practice guide, which built on this and showed examples and best practices of shows that had already opened. And we're just updating it now, so we're going to publish that, in the next coming weeks. So you can see examples of what shows that have opened in China, in Korea, and other parts of the world are doing. But yeah, we can learn from each other. As Sue mentioned again, we're an industry that really works collaboratively. And hopefully, the more that we can demonstrate that these events can take place, nothing is ultimately safe, but we can minimize the risks and do our part of it, the more that the legislators in various parts of the world can have the confidence to give us the green light.
Yep, and I'll throw this to anybody. This is obviously a topic of the day. How do you create high engagement in your initial virtual events? Does anybody want to take that one from the audience member?
Well, I'll start. I think for us, everyone was ready to hear something positive, good news, and get information from the programs that we always do and that they're engaged in. During this time, to be able to celebrate business excellence and be able to still provide those awards, celebrate, Businesswoman of the Year, that helped engage in those initial events. And I think the curiosity to see how we could pull it off in a safe way and was really of interest, and to kind of set the bar and be a leader for our chambers here in Arizona and other places.
Yeah, I'd say from our side, our events are really important to our members. At our Congress, they're small, it's 500 people, but from 50 countries. So if you're interested in doing an event in South Korea or in Brazil, or, there's people there. So it's really important. We've kept in touch via Zoom and webinars, etc. But people really want to get back and meet together. And we're hearing the same message, and the studies that we're going to publish bear out the same message. People want to get back and meet. Now, of course, it's a very divisive issue. Some people are genuinely scared, and they won't travel until there's a vaccine. So we're guessing that people will certainly travel internationally less, and whereas they might have sent 2, 3, 4 people, they might send 1, and it might be a more senior role. We'll have to see, but certainly the majority of people do want to meet again and want to get back. So for our meetings, as I said, we're perhaps foolhardy, trying to plan 3 events in about 12 weeks time in November around the world, but we'll see how it goes. I think people will bear with us and understand the limitations posed on it, but people want to get back in the room together.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen this, our China operation, people getting right back to events as quickly as they could because they wanted that human interaction, after being stuck at home for as long as they were. And obviously offices are back in China, but, not huge events, but, regular events are happening, pretty much every day now. So it's, people want that human
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to SNIEC, Shanghai New International Exhibition Center. You know, the kind of modern venue in Shanghai. They're almost back to normal. They're busy every day. They're running shows back to back. So that's great to hear.
Absolutely. And we are just approaching 1 o'clock. As we promised to everybody, we will end at 1 o'clock. I know people scheduled an hour, so we try to maximize that. And I hope everybody takes away something valuable from the discussion from Sue, Nick, and Ann. Thank you all very much for your time this afternoon, evening for Nick, and certainly early morning there in Arizona for Ann. So thank you again from Event Bank. Appreciate everybody participating, and look forward to seeing everybody very soon. Stay safe.